Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Leffel, and I am a librarian in Frisco, Texas. And I am so excited to be moderating the Young Sleuths panel this afternoon. You are in for a treat as we talk to four absolutely amazing authors. So, authors, if you can go ahead and turn on your camera so they can all see your smiling faces. This session is all about mysteries. So, four drastically different books, but at the heart, it's all about these young people having the chance to figure out how to solve some mysteries. So, the first thing I want to do today is give each author a chance to share a little bit about their book. So, we're going to start with Taylor Banks, author of Billions to Burn from Disney Publishing.
Hi, everybody. I'm Taylor Banks, and my debut novel is about four estranged friends who reunite to solve a 100-year-old mystery that dates back to the Harlem Renaissance. So they solve a trail of clues that are anchored in African American history and uncover a hidden treasure at the end of the book.
Thank you, Taylor. Next up, we have Anastasia Garcia, author of Creepy Campfire Stories, Frights to Tell at Night from Gibbs Smith Publishing.
Hi, everybody. Here's Creepy Campfire Stories. Super creepy. Creepy Campfire Stories is a collection of short horror stories for young readers. We touch on scary mermaids, monsters, ghosts, all kinds of creepy things based on folklore.
Thank you. And next we have Stuart Gibbs, author of Spy School Blackout by Simon and Schuster Publishing.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is actually the 13th book in the Spy School series, although you don't have to read them all in order. In this one, my spies in training find themselves stranded in Indonesia when a very devious hacker shuts down all the world's power grids. And then they discover they might actually be the only ones who can figure out where that person is and get all the power back on for all of us.
Ooh, wonderful. Sounds action-packed. And last but not least, we have Jason Platt, author of Paw Order, Volume 1, The Grilled Cheese Caper from Papercutz.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Jason Platt, and yeah, Paw and Order is a full graphic novel that I wrote and illustrated. And in it, you have Perlock and Marlowe, who are detectives, and they go to the grilled cheese festival in town, only to find out that all of the grilled cheese sandwiches have been stolen, and it's up to them to figure out who did it and why.
Ooh, thank you. All right. So, our very first question is going to be for everyone. Taylor, I'm going to start with you. When you were in middle school, what were your favorite mystery books or mystery authors that you just had to read?
So I read a lot of like Encyclopedia Brown and Boxcar Children. I didn't really have a lot of books or like know a lot of books that featured people of color or girls as a kid because I grew up in the deep South, but I still got into them anyway. Like I remember wanting to have a photographic memory and like trying to solve clues on my own. So yeah, that was my thing.
Ah, Encyclopedia Brown, that takes me back. All right. Anastasia, what about you?
So I'm coming to this from like a horror spooky place, and to me, the
Okay.
most fun things that I like checking out from my local library, which were unexplained mysteries. So this was everything about Bigfoots, aliens, ghosts, monsters, putting the clues together, looking at the eyewitness accounts and sketches, and reading through 911 transcripts of sightings to try and find, the most unexplainable things in the world. So that's what I loved as a kid.
Yes, I love it. All right, what about you, Stuart?
Well, I'm holding my favorite mystery right here, which is The West End
Ooh.
Game by Ellen Raskin,
Oh, yeah.
which I have fond memories. I can remember reading this book as a kid because it triggered. There were so many like aha moments in it, and so I still reread it a lot. But man, I'm also a huge Encyclopedia Brown fan, and just learned so much about how to build a mystery in just such a short space from that series.
And Jason, how about you?
I would have to agree with Stuart. The Weston game was a huge influence on me when I was growing up, but also like Encyclopedia Brown. But when I was in middle school, I got really hooked on Agatha Christie. My mom read Agatha Christie a lot when I was a kid, and I remember reading, and then there were none for the first time, and I was just gripped. I was intrigued and scared all at the same time, and I didn't want it to stop.
Oh man, I love that. I love how those classics are still being checked out from middle school libraries today. All right, so let's get into your books. So, Taylor, Billions to Burn is kind of like National Treasure with a Harlem Renaissance twist. What inspired you to use the Harlem Renaissance as the feature of this action adventure mystery story?
Well, I just think the Harlem Renaissance is a less explored era of history for kids. Like growing up as a Black kid in South Carolina, I was basically taught there was slavery and then there was Martin Luther King Jr. and nothing happened in between. So I like didn't know about the Great Migration or like any of these like rich explosions of Black innovation until I was an adult. And I feel like when you grow up with so little knowledge about your ancestors, it kind of leaves this like hole in your understanding of who you are. So I'm hoping that when kids read my book, they'll go like, "Whoa, wait, we did that? Like we were spies, we were Olympians," and then like be inspired to do research on their own.
Man, I love that you're filling in a hole that you felt that you had as a kid. And, being a woman of color as well, I completely understand where you're coming from. Thank you. All right, Anastasia, your stories range from creepy mermaids to spooky pizzerias to a teacher with split personality and everything in between. And when I say split, I mean split personality. You've got to read to really figure out what's going on there. When writing a story collection, do you find that you write a lot of the stories at once, or do you kind of wait for inspiration to strike? And how is the process different from maybe writing like a full form novel?
Yeah, everything I start, regardless of what I'm writing, always starts with one line idea. So I have to get a bunch of those on a page all at once. And then I kind of like wait for them to gel and grow. Some stories start, they can move fast. I can get to an outline and out and a cool, scary ending really quickly. Others take a little while. So when I approach a short story collection, I put them in a little chart and I watch them kind of like move along. My ideas come from everywhere. Sometimes I can turn it on and sit in front of a computer. Other times I'm usually in my notes app on my phone as I'm on the subway or in the middle of the night, especially when a scary thought comes upon me right before I fall asleep. Or I'm jotting things down at work. So it kind of comes from all angles. And as far as short stories and short story collections, how they differ from novels, you have quite a lot of time to sit with the characters as they grow and they change and they build. And you have to make sure pacing is tight. There's a lot of focus on making sure that you're pulling a reader through hundreds of pages. So for short stories, to me, it's about ambiance, emotion. Can you drop a reader into the action, the mood, the time, the place, the character quickly so that they're consumed by it in a small, short amount of time. And then a snippy ending. The ending has to like gut punch you. It has to be scary. It has to be hard. And so for me, that's how I approach those short stories versus a novel, which has a lot more time.
Yes, and your frights are definitely it's not, and, we vanquished the monster and everything's happy. Not all of these have a
I,
happy
I I
ending for
hated yeah, I hated
for
those when
you.
I was a kid. I hated when they wrapped it up with a bow. So some of these stories, some end, great, some end spooky, some end kind of in a mysterious place.
All righty. So, Stuart, you are no stranger to mysteries. Between Fun Jungle, Moonbase Alpha, and Spy School, you've shown that mysteries can happen anywhere. How do you keep your ideas and characters fresh, especially with this being book number 13 in the Spy School series?
Well, I think the reason any author really does a series is because we really fall in love with our characters, and we don't want to say goodbye to them, right? They become kind of like friends, family to us, and so really, what's driving the stories usually is where I can go with the characters and how I can keep developing them. I don't want them to stay exactly the same from book to book, so there is some kind of growth there. And then and then you just sort of look out into the world and look at sometimes my job is to come up with things that can go wrong in the world, and the world is doing a pretty good job of coming up with things that can go wrong. So I sometimes I'm like, oh man, I never would have thought of that. So I am sort of keeping my eyes open to look for different places I can go with stories, exploring the world as much as I can, talking to experts about what they think are going to be issues coming up. But really, it's the characters that are kind of driving this series forward and saying, like, what can happen to them in each book.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Jason, I love your characters. Perlock and Marlowe are quite the pair. It kind of reminds me of those classic tales where you have the one that really knows what's going on and the one that really thinks that they know what's going on. So, can you talk to us a little bit about Perlock and Marlowe, about their methods for solving cases and the inspiration behind their names? And don't forget, Meowiarty.
Meowiarty, yeah, they're Perlock's nemesis, Meowiarty. In Paw and Order, you have Perlock and Marlowe, Perlock being the cat, Marlowe being the dog. And as a kid, I really loved the idea of like a traditional detective mystery of like someone trying to solve the crime, not just having it be mysterious, but someone who's solving the crime. And so it's very traditional in a sense where there's a crime scene, there are evidence and clues for the kids to locate and notice. And then you watch Perlock and Marlowe go and investigate and interview the suspects. So then the kids can put the pieces together and they too can try and solve it. And as for their names, Perlock is obviously a poke at Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's main character. And then Marlowe is based off of Raymond Chandler's character, Philip Marlowe. And I wanted to show like two characters, two detectives that have inspired me, but two different ways of solving a crime.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. And audience, I want to remind you, if you have any questions for these fabulous authors, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Be sure and click on that and ask those questions, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. All right. So we're circling back. Taylor. So each character in your book has their own unique set of skills that help them solve the mystery of Burn. And you'll have to be sure and tell everybody what Burn is. So tell us about Charlie, Ashley, David, and Zeus, and why you decided to tell the story from the perspectives of Zeus and Charlie.
Sure. So I just really wanted a diverse cast so that readers could place themselves in the main character's shoes and like always kind of find something that they could see themselves in. So like Ashley's a technophile, David's a music prodigy, Charlie likes architecture and zoology, Zeus is a history buff. So like no matter what challenge the kids face, someone's natural talents are always shining through. I chose Zeus and Charlie's perspectives for the first book because they're going through something that most kids have probably gone through. A friend moves away, the relationship doesn't end well, and then how do you reconcile that? So like through their perspectives, you kind of get to see like what steps they take to heal the relationship, and at the same time explore like what do you do when the adults in your life give you advice that conflicts with what your heart says is right and wrong. And as to what Burn is, so Burn is kind of a fictional version of this real Black literary magazine called Fire that was set during the Harlem Renaissance. And, ironically, it was called Fire Magazine, and then the headquarters burned down after one issue. And there's this mystery of what really happened. And so they're kind of playing with a fictional version of that.
I love it. Now, Zeus's name is a nickname. Can you tell everybody what his full name is? And then how did you come up with that name and then his family's name?
Oh, so so his original name is like Amadeus, and he's like Amadeus the third. And so the very first chapter of the book, you get a perspective of like his great great grandfather, who was basically one of the founders of Burn magazine in this world, along with Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston. So he's kind of got this personal connection to the mystery itself. I've already forgotten the second question you asked me. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
just how did you come up with the name? Like how did you decide on Amadeus for his name and then Zeus for his nickname?
I'm going to be honest, there's no special thing to names. I often will go to name generators. Like, I want a classy, old historical name that can be
I
passed
love
down
it.
from families, or like, I want a nickname a kid would think was cool. So, no creativity on that part for me.
Hey, that's creative too. I mean, you've got to find those names somehow. I love it. Thank you, Taylor. All right. Anastasia, at the end of the collection, you provide notes with your inspiration for the stories. Will you tell us about one of your stories and the inspiration behind it?
Sure. So I try and base a lot of my stories in folklore. A lot of the things that scared us back in the day still scare us today, and I like making it slightly educational. So I listen to a lot of horror podcasts, and I listen to lore podcasts. I'm sure a lot of people do. Aaron Mahnke's lore podcast, and he does a lot of short snippets of like horror history. And one of the things he said, I was like, I need to go find the original source of that because it was so freaky to me at the time. It stopped me in my tracks from like cleaning the kitchen. So I'll just tell a short story and then show you where it is in my book. Um, in 1845, there was a story of a French teacher who arrives at an all-girls boarding school. And then as she arrives, so do like rumors and whispers of where she came from. Apparently, people think she could appear in two places at once. And according to legend, or the stories that these girls told over the years, one day while the school was assembled for a school picture, everyone saw her in two places at once. So it essentially proved the rumors true. So in my short story, Mademoiselle, Mademoiselle, we visit a school, an all-girls boarding school, at a time in the year when this mysterious French teacher arrives, bringing with her not just a doppelganger, but a sinister twin. So I'll leave it at that. But that one I really liked.
I love it. It almost reminded me like if Stephen King wrote Miss Nelson is Missing.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
That's the kind of vibe I was getting. That they were all just so fabulous. And now you had mentioned like when you're on the subway, you're writing stories and getting ideas about just this is just like an off the cuff estimate. How many stories do you think you think about versus how many actually get written down and written, like ideas versus what you write?
My goodness, I actually just did it, looked at my Google Doc and saw, I say it's like kind of an iceberg. Like I think maybe 20% of the ideas I write down actually come to fruition, whether in short stories or in like novel outlines, like I'm getting ready to build them out. So there's so many. I like to keep them all in one place because you never know. Sometimes you come back, stumble on a quote, stumble on a scribble and realize, ooh, that's the perfect thing for this next thing. So I've just got constantly things just bouncing around in there. Some of them will see the light of day and others will stay in the dark.
Thank you. All right, Stuart. So, in this installment of Spy School, Ben and his crew crash land in Indonesia and have to deal with the birthday cake. This is not a yummy birthday cake, y'all. What is a birthday cake, and what type of research did you do on Indonesia, CIA operations, spy operations to come up with this?
Well, a birthday cake is a term. I came up with that term for when the power goes out because they blow the lights out. But it seemed like a good CIA term. The Indonesia thing happened just because my kids and I were looking for a place to go on vacation, and I really like charismatic megafauna, which are very large animals. So I was like, oh, you can see orangutans and Komodo dragons in the same country. Great. And then it turns out there's all these amazing ruins like Yogyakarta and Prambanan that like I was like, how have I never even heard about these places before? They're just absolutely amazing architectural spaces. So that was sort of the start of it. Thinking like there was something interesting there, but the idea about the birthday cake really came from I have been allowed to I have finally after many years I do have some advisors in the espionage community, and they're really concerned about somebody really hackers like getting into our power grid. That's a pretty serious issue, and so it seemed like those were the people who were most like the folks who worked in computers, either on the defensive side of trying to keep us all safe. They were really, really concerned about this and really wanted me to know about this being a concern, that we have people who are working very, very hard to make sure it doesn't happen, but it is a constant battle.
You pick such an innocuous and clever name for a very real threat. Now, you had mentioned with Indonesia, that was the place that you thought about going. When you're putting your different stories, like when you had Spy School Goes Wild and it took place in Africa, are these all places that you've thought about going, or how do you come up with them?
Yeah, usually they come because I'm in a place, and I like if I'm on vacation with my kids and they look at me and go, "This is a great place for an action sequence," then I'm like, okay, I gotta think about this. But I'm usually kind of thinking that too. So I didn't really set out to say like let's do Indonesia. I was just there with my family, and it was just such a wonderful place. Same thing happened with Goes Wild. Same thing happened with Alaska for Spy School Goes North. Originally, the stories were really being driven by where I thought they needed to be in places I was familiar with. Like, I mean, I knew Washington, D.C. pretty well when I set the original book there. But I don't necessarily go to these places like saying like I have to come up with an idea here, but I generally do come up with ideas when I'm traveling, and then all those trips are tax deductible. So the research.
So, where are you going on vacation next?
I mean, that's a good question. I would love to go. I would really love to do China. I'd love to do something from Spy School set in China. I don't know if I'll be able to get there for that one, but we'll see.
Very cool. All right, Jason. So I love that, you're going along, you're seeing all the clues and the mystery, and you have your characters break the fourth wall and encourage readers to go back. You tell them the page number and tell them really to look at the clues and see if they can solve it for themselves. When you're illustrating and writing clues, how do you balance making it simple enough that kids can actually figure it out versus making it too easy where, they're halfway through and say, "Oh, it's this."
Yeah, exactly. Thank you about the fourth wall. That was one of it's like a little nugget of a surprise because you kind of don't expect the character to look at you and ask you a question. And I actually got that from an old, I'm dating myself a little bit, but there's this old TV show called Ellery Queen, and Jim Hutton, at the end of the episode, would always look right at the camera and say, "All right, you have all the clues. Was it this person? Was it this person?" And I just really love that interaction. And so I wanted to give the readers one more chance to figure it out, because sometimes like you flip the page, it's like, oh no, it's spoiled. I didn't get a chance to solve it. So I wanted the readers to get like just one more shot to look over the clues in the interviews, just one more time. And when it comes down like to the uh, doing a mystery for a younger audience, I don't like to dumb it down whatsoever. There are like some mysteries that I've read where there might have been only one suspect, and it's like it's that person. They're they're saying this one person, it has to be them. And I wanted more than one suspect to be involved and have the readers like look at not only like what they're saying, but what are they doing, and is what they're saying making them innocent or is it making them guilty, and why? And so when it comes down to it, it's just really this, for me, it's this fun logic puzzle for the kids to figure out. And even if you get it wrong, there's that, hopefully there'll be like this gasp of like, oh, it was that person moment. And as a reader, I love those moments, even if I'm wrong.
I love it. Now, with this being a graphic novel and you've had, your graphic novel in the past, The Middle School Misadventures. Now,
Mhm.
granted, that's humans versus now you've got cats, dogs, and other animals. Do you find that you change your illustration style any, or do you feel like when people see it, they're like, "Oh, that's a Jason Platt book"?
I hope it's a Jason Platt book, but it's funny because like if you look at the structure of Perlock's face, he looks like Newell from Middle School Misadventures. He has the same cheekbone that Newell has. So if you look at Perlock compared to Newell, my main character in Middle School Misadventures, it's like, oh, that's definitely him. So there are certainly some tells for sure.
I love it. Thank you so much. All right. So it looks like we have an audience question. So this question is for Heidi. Hi, Heidi. And it says, how do you go about planning the mysteries in your books and how they will be solved? So if anybody wants to jump in there.
I always like to answer this question by quoting the great James Ponti, who's another great author who said it better than anybody else. But he said, like, you actually have to think like a criminal, and
Mm,
often you come up the crime, think, how could I commit that crime, and then and then that would leave a certain number of clues, and so you sometimes almost work backwards. You say, like, okay, I know how they did it, I know with the clues they leave, now I got to figure out like how my hero is going to go through the story, picking up those clues on the way. But you do end up asking, if you're researching a crime, you often end up asking the sorts of criminal questions that might get you kicked out of museums or zoos or things. I definitely asked a zoo once, could you fit a koala into a backpack? And they got very suspicious of me.
And then you were like, no, I'm Stuart Gibbs. I'm Stuart Gibbs.
It was early in my career, and so I couldn't even fall back on that.
I love
And to go on
that.
with what Stuart was saying is you want to do that with the criminal of like why and who, but then also the red herrings of the other characters that are involved to throw suspicion away from that the main criminal, and how close are they with the reasons of why and how with them as well.
For sure. Anything else to add? All right. So audience, you can keep asking questions. I'm going to keep going, but if you all come up with something, be sure and put it in that Q&A. All right. So when it comes to your books, and I'm going to go in reverse order this time since Jason, you've been so patient waiting for everybody. What do you think is the most important thing that readers should remember when trying to solve a mystery, specifically in your books? Like, do you have a certain kind of little thing that you think about as you're doing it?
Uh, well, a couple things. One thing, like what I had said before, it's a logic puzzle, and even though it's a story and you want to be entertained, you want to just have fun at the same time. And kind of going again with what Stuart said is like the characters are you go for you stay along for the mystery, but you stay around for the characters,
Mm.
and you want to read the next book because A, the mystery was fun, but you want to see what happens to these particular characters. And so I always want to make sure that there's a fun aspect. And as a cartoonist, I think that I have a leg up on that aspect.
Yes. All right. What about you, Stuart?
Well, I mean, the thing of any mystery has to, a good mystery has to be fair, right? Like I have to make sure that all the clues are actually in there. If you ever read one, there's a thing like you read one and like the bad guy shows up and you're like, that person wasn't even in the book. That's the word. I don't like those at all. Um, so so I guess if you're reading, you should a good mystery, like I need to make sure that I have put everything in there, that so it's a totally fair thing. So but one of what you're trying to do a lot of the time is make sure that like Jason was just talking about red herrings, you're trying to throw people off, and so sometimes the most obvious clue is not going to be the clue. It's actually going to be what you need to solve the mystery. It's the clue. Like a good trick I find is to like make it like it looks like it's about this footprint, but it's actually about this broken branch over here and that sort of thing. So sometimes it's the stuff that's kind of doesn't look as important that turns out to be what's really important.
All right. Thank you, Stuart. All right. Anastasia.
Yeah, so in my stories, there's not quite a mystery to solve, but it's more like how do I survive to the end? And I think there's two key things that I always try and write in, which is to survive, you must be smart, skilled, and a little lucky, because it's, you could have the smarts and the skills and then just like, oh no, I tripped. And then there you go. So in my stories, not all kids are smart. Maybe they're mean, maybe they aren't listening, maybe they aren't quite skilled at this sort of thing. And then some of them just get unlucky. So some of them don't make it to the end. And then the two piece that is really important to me, just personally, listen to your elders. So there's so much that we can learn from the generation before us, whether it's our grandparents, our parents, our tios, our tias, our cousins, our older friends. Like there is knowledge that they are passing down through story, or I heard this thing once, and maybe you should listen to it. So you should always, as a character in my stories, listen and be willing to learn because there is something that someone heard that may help you down the line.
I love it. And Taylor.
I mean, I'd say the most important thing is just to have fun and not get frustrated if you can't figure something out before the main characters. Because in addition to like the kind of two overarching mysteries, which are what happened to Zeus's grandfather, his mysterious disappearance, and also what exactly did his ancestor bury, there's all these kind of mini games that feature like chemistry knowledge or math knowledge or history knowledge. So I kind of tried to throw in puzzles that different kids would be able to solve. So, as a reader, you might not be able to solve them all. And also, like when you're trying to solve some of the history questions, you might look up the person that the main characters are talking about and learn more yourself. So just have fun, do research, and learn more about the past.
I love it. Thank you. All right. So we have some more audience questions. This one is from Judy. Hi, Judy. And it says, in a middle grade mystery, how crucial is it to have an underlying emotional conflict to sell in today's market?
I can answer a little briefly from a horror angle, like why I think emotion and horror specifically is important for today's day and age. I think kids can handle quite a lot and handle big, giant topics. So we don't have to kidify. Sometimes we can, and they can be fun and light, and sometimes we can touch on some bigger topics. For me, I firmly believe books help us to be empathetic people, and horror books especially help us tackle some big, scary things in a safe space. A reader can always close a book. They can take time with it to deal with it later when they're feeling a little bit braver. They can talk to others about what scared them. So horror books to me do more than just give us like a little fright and kind of scare us. You can add some of that emotional element to it so that it helps build readers' resilience and makes them brave over time. So I do think it's like emotion is very core to horror for me.
I love that. It's giving them that safe space to experience scary things. Wonderful. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I think I can comment on that. I think middle school in particular is a terrifying, traumatic time where you're experiencing a lot of emotions very strongly for the first time. So you're making friends, losing friends, encountering bullies, crushes, expectations of your parents. So I think being able to touch on the things they're going through in the background of the mystery will just help them feel like they're being seen and heard. And I think that'll just make the book a bit more successful.
Yeah. All right. Stuart, I saw you unmuting. Did you have something to add?
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, Jason mentioned before about like not writing down, I think that if you talk to kids, they know what's happening in the world, and there's a lot of things going on, and there's really nothing that like if you like yeah, I look around the world, see what's happening, and I found out very quickly, say with my Fun Jungle series, that kids wanted to, they wanted to know about topics like the animals being hunted to extinction, or things like that. So there's like the topics that are resonant for them, but then there are the topics that are resonant about, like, well, here's what's going on our planet, here's what's going on in the government, here's what's happening between countries or whatever, and that stuff you don't have to shy away from. And I think they're ready for it, and they're eager for it, and interested to learn about what's going on in the world.
Oh, thank you.
And to tack on, I think also what's really important too, at least for me, I love it when you find out who the bad guy is. And when you find out their motives in this whole adventure, I think it's important to realize and empathize actually with them why they did it
Mm.
and their reasoning, because to them, it might have been a very valuable reason why. It could have been greed, jealousy, or whatever it may be. But when you find out the reason why, your reader can also empathize, like, what they did was wrong, but I understand why they did it.
That's such a great point to think about everything from all angles. So thank you, Jason. All right. So we have another question from Heidi. Hello again. And it says, I'm planning to genrefy my library. And while all your books are mysteries, some of them span more than one genre. So, for example, horror, scary, action, adventure, humor. Can you talk about writing across genres and where should your books be put?
I mean, gentrification is one of those tricky ones, right? Like that's like because this is the exact problem with it. Like, where does everything go? I would always feel like I'm a mystery writer first with a lot of them. Like I did write a sci-fi series that was set on the moon, but I don't really think of it as a sci-fi series because I set out to write a sci-fi series and it turned into a mystery series. So I kind of think of mystery first, but it really is kind of up to the librarian to figure out where all these things go.
Yeah, I'm very much an advocate for horror. And especially when I was a kid, there wasn't a lot of horror for kids. There was Goosebumps, and that was basically it. Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. But now you're seeing like a proliferation of a lot of horror-centric, supernatural, spooky, scary. And for me as a kid, if I was in the library and I found a book and I wanted to see other books like it, I would love for them to be in one specific place. So if there is elements of horror, keep it there. And then I love being able to like watch my horror grow and change. So I'm very much like horror first, but you could also, I've also seen in my local library, they tag it a couple of ways. So a book will always have a little bat sticker if it's horror first, and then they'll put a little romance. If there's like a romance, they'll put a little sticker for like action adventure if it feels like it's going a little fantasy. So I did love that. So maybe that's a recommendation, couple of tag stickers.
I think with mine, it's a little bit easier because it'll probably be categorized as a graphic novel, as opposed to mystery, then graphic novel. So in my case, it's just a little bit different, even though I think that graphic novel, then mystery, and then humor. So it, but just like Anastasia said, it depends on the librarian.
Thank you. What about you, Taylor?
I mean, I think my book really kind of only falls into two categories. So it'd be mystery and then maybe like historical or educational. But I mean, I feel like it doesn't really matter which category you put it into. I guess it does have elements of action adventure because the kids are like flying all across the US and like sometimes getting into some really dangerous situations. So why not just have a ton of copies and then put them in every single category?
That's what I was gonna say. As a salesperson and having read all of your books, I'm gonna just tell you all librarians, if you have the budget, buy multiple copies. Get that one and put it in horror and also mystery. So let's help these authors out. All right. So as we get ready to close, Taylor, I'm going to start with you. And I know some of y'all's books end on cliffhangers, so it kind of sets itself up. What are your next projects that you can tell us about?
Well, obviously, I have plans for the second novel in the Burn series, which I'm hoping it's kind of a spoiler, but whatever. We'll dig into the history of like erased black towns like Seneca Village and Oscarville. I kind
Ooh.
of hint to that at in the cliffhanger at the end. But right now, I'm working on a young adult epic fantasy, kind of like Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, if you ever read that. So it's about like a street urchin who has to unearth her magic lineage to save her city from a threat from another world. And it focuses really heavily on like generational trauma and race relations.
Ooh, that sounds really good. All right. Anastasia.
Okay, great. Sorry, I skipped for just a second. Yes. So I'm working actually on book 3 in the Frights to Tell at Night series. The first one was Ghosts, this one's Campfire Stories, and the third one is going to be Haunted Places and Spaces. So there's going to be more short horror. It's all coming out. And then I will also be editing an anthology for adults that's all about new cryptids. So this is beyond Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and Chupacabra. It's brand new, all new folklore and monsters.
Oh, wow, that sounds good. All right, Stuart, how many are we going to do in this spy school series?
I don't know. I don't know. Less than 100, more than 15, I think. I don't know. Yeah, Blackout comes out in October. Actually, before that, I just had the Spy Ski School graphic novel came out Tuesday. I have another mystery, with the next one in the Fun Jungle series, which is All Ears, comes out in May. I think on May 13th, which is a mystery involving an elephant that has mysteriously vanished. And then actually the Moonbase Alpha series is getting turned into graphic novels. So Space Case, the graphic novel, will come out in August of this year. So I got a busy year.
That's exciting. All right. And what about you, Jason?
Well, Paw and Order, the grilled cheese caper comes out in August, and then October comes Paw and Order, the sleeping artist mystery. And then I am currently penciling the third book in the series, Paw and Order, The Night of the Comet. So that's just a working title right now, but I'm penciling it right now.
Oh, wow. So how long does it take you to illustrate one of your graphic novels?
Ooh, with Paw and Order, it takes me about 6 months altogether from start to finish. For my other series, Middle School Misadventures, it took me a full year to write, illustrate, and color and ink and everything. But it's if I could go back and tell my 7-year-old self, this is what you're going to be doing for a living, I would be just like slack-jawed. I I am living my dream.
You'd be sitting in math class like, I already know how this is going to end. Oh my goodness. So, thank you so much to all of our speakers, Taylor, Anastasia, Stuart, Jason. This has been an incredible conversation. I've loved every minute of it. Thank you to all of you out in the audience for joining us. Now, remember, this day is not over yet. We still have our last session of the day, and that is our closing keynote with Paul Tremblay. So, please stick around. Make sure you go to the exhibit halls, get some ARCs, maybe even some ARCs of some of these books by these wonderful authors. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us.